Hello there, and welcome to a new Teemo video. Today I want to break up with the myth of the uselessness of Teemo. I guess every Teemo player out there had to deal at least once with the typical "Don't pick Teemo, he's a useless champ" quote in the game lobby. I guess everybody who likes to play this champ has seen this phrase a lot. And today I wanted to talk about how it comes to this public view, to this public attitude towards this champion, because I feel like it's totally not true. But being kind of a Teemo main, I mean, I have literally a few hundred games behind me with this champion. I mained him in Season 4. I had a 60-ish percentage winning rate in Season 4 on Silver and Gold Elo. I maintained a 60-ish win ratio in preseason with top lane Teemo up to Gold 2 to P5 Elo. And so chances are this champion isn't as useless as keep saying. I mean, it might be true that there are a lot of better options for the top lane meta-wise than Teemo, but anyways, how does it come to this public opinion? There are several different reasons for that, so I want to cover them up a little and help you guys being not the useless Teemo people are talking about all time. So point one, a lot of Teemo players feed in the early game. This is the first point why this public attitude has risen up, because as a matter of fact, it's kind of similar to Yasuo. Many Teemo players fuck up their early game because they play too aggressively, since Teemo's an excellent lane bully, and you can play all this aggression you want on your enemy. You can bully, you can maintain a lot of pressure on your enemy, but when you do that in the early game, what's gonna happen is your lane will be pushing towards the enemy, just like you're seeing here. And when your lane is pushed towards the enemy, you're an easy gank. So if we look at it at this game, I'm on the red side. If I push this whole scenario into the turret early on, Nocturne started at the bot side, and around minute 3 to minute 4, he will be at the upper side. And if I'm pushed up like that on this time of the game, I mean, now it's after minute 4, and you can see Nocturne is strolling around somewhere else. And if you're standing here around minute 3 and 4, well, what's gonna happen? The enemy jungle will come over the river and kill you, because without mushrooms and anything, Teemo is really horrible in 1v2ing people, so here starts the feed. My way to deal with that is to play very conservatively in the early levels. Play more under my turret, play more in towards your own turret until you hit that level 6 and until you can actually work towards your enemy turret and covering up the whole place with shrooms and creating a lot of safety for your person. That's the first thing I kind of like doing every game, to avoid myself feeding early on. That's really important. So this is point one, where the myth of the uselessness of Teemo kicks in. So the second point is, many people think that Teemo is useless in teamfights. So that's another thing. Actually, it's true. He is not as useful in a teamfight like, let's say, the Maokai I'm facing here in this game. But as a matter of fact, it's also a lot depending on your playstyle. Teemo is a low-range auto attacker. Let's be totally honest with that. As a long-range auto attacker, you gotta be super careful about your positioning. You can't afford to play too aggressively, because with that kind of range, you're pretty much dead meat in many situations. So that means you have to stand back, kill whatever is available, but don't overextend and don't push too hard into getting kills, because your range is terribly low, so you can get killed very, very easily. So this is why a lot of people think that Teemo is useless at teamfights, because it's actually really hard to pull him off properly in teamfights. But if you're able to stand back behind your team, if you're able to take your focus into everything that jumps into your team, and focusing into placing mushrooms into teamfight situations, you're really powerful. and you're actually contributing a lot for your team into team fights if you do it like that. But a lot of Teemo players actually go too aggressive because you have a lot of damage in your hands and you're pretty confident in taking these kills, but you end up being the priority target and just feeding. That's the next thing where the uselessness of Teemo kicks in. So you gotta be really, really careful about this situation. You need to be super careful with your positioning in team fights and try to bring in as much as damage as possible, drop in as many mushrooms into the fight as possible, but also not bringing yourself into the position where you're just baiting your team into death. It's pretty hard. I gotta admit, I think the team fighting portion is one of the hardest parts of playing Teemo in general. But it's doable, and it's actually really not bad, especially if the rest of your team is performing pretty good. So that brings me to the third point about the uselessness of Teemo. As a matter of fact, Teemo is really bad once your team is getting hard behind. Teemo can't do shit for a team which is failing on one or two positions. If your team is at least even or struggling for success and keeping the fight on, it's actually all good. You can win the game still, but Teemo has a really great weakness considering these situations where, let's say, your jungler is 0-6 and 0 and your mid lane is 1-5 and 0. So situations like these, there are top laners which can swing the momentum in favor of the own team and actually doing stuff. Teemo's not one of those. If you're playing something like Camille or Gangplank or whatever, stuff that can actually pick out priority targets and swing fights around, you're off in a very, very better place. And this leads to the common misconception that Teemo is a useless champ only because he's not able to solo carry teams. And that's not what you're getting when you're playing Teemo at this point. That's really not what you're getting. and this is the main reason why people think Teemo is a useless champ, because you're in a very, very bad game and two of your people are really underperforming and your top lane somehow is, let's say, 4-0-0, but you're still losing the game somehow. And that happens a lot. That really happens a lot. For me, as a really regular Teemo player, I've ran so many times into this situation where I was really horribly fed, really strong, but two people on my team were so heavy that I didn't have a chance to swing the game back into our favor. This is the next point where the people will say, hey, Teemo's so freaking useless. But let's face the fact, our team was pretty useless. Our team was performing really bad, and thus we lost the game. That's the thing. Well, if you pick another champion, you might be able to swing those games back into your favor, sure. But Teemo's none of those. Let's be quite honest, he's not the kind of champion which can swing games back into your favor. And thus, people are saying Teemo's a useless champ. That's how it comes. So that's basically the essence of how people come to the conception that Teemo is a useless champ, because it's happening a lot that you're having a feeding Teemo on your team, and I gotta be honest that there are games I'm feeding too, even with hundreds of games of experience into this champion. It just happens because you're damn vulnerable, your range is damn low, and pretty much every play you want to take is a matter of risk. There are really few games where you don't have to take some risks to achieve kills. That's just how it is. And this leads to the fact that a lot of games can go pretty bad. Can't change it. So, to sum it up, Teemo is a champ which is pretty hard to play, to be quite honest. I would call him a champion which is easy to pick up, but hard to master, actually. And considering players like Ivan Pavlov, who actually plays Teemo in Challenger environment in North America, so it is possible to pull this champion off quite successfully in Challenger. It's not impossible. It's doable, in fact. So I'd say it's just so much practice necessary to pull it off that most people don't go for it. While Teemo is mechanically a very, very easy champ, I mean, the most complicated mechanics I can imagine about this champion is the good old auto Q auto combo. That's pretty much it. And apart from that, you have to work around mobility mechanics with your W. But the skill ceiling of this champion is really low. Where Teemo really shines, and why I think he's actually also viable in higher elo if you one-trick him, is because of his preparation skills across the battlefield. When you know where the battle will start, and if you are there before the battle starts, you can do a lot of good preparation for team fights with your mushrooms. That's basically something which no other champion in the game can provide. No other champion can bring up so many landmines on the map like Teemo. And yeah, the problem about Teemo in Season 8 right now is the game is not so much about split pushing anymore, it's more about team fighting in the mid game and getting successes from that. Well, snowballing in the early game is also a very big deal, but let's be quite honest, the early game on the top lane is not really so much decided by the top laners, apart from kill-heavy champions with skill sets that just rely on getting kills early on. Let's say like a Pantheon or even a Jax can create a lot of kill pressure too. Teemo doesn't have so much kill pressure because he has no hard CC, has no mobility, so it's basically not easy to achieve a solo kill on this champion if you're not running Ignite. Which I rarely do because I value the mobility across the map a lot more than just the kill potential on top lane. This brings me to the point that I must say in Season 8, well, Teemo is, well, let's not say he's in a bad spot, but the meta doesn't really favor him right now. But let's be quite honest, there never was any meta which really made Teemo a huge meta pick or something like that. He's more of a weird role in general, but he's a lovely game champ to play, and he's actually really good, really well balanced. You can notice that due to the fact that Teemo didn't get changed since ages. The biggest change Teemo has seen was the fact that he could throw his mushrooms and that they can bounce on top of each other while placing them. But that was pretty much the biggest change Teemo has ever faced across the whole game. That's because he's pretty balanced in himself. If you would give him more, he would become OP. If you would take away something from him, he would be really entirely useless. So, to sum it up, I don't think that Teemo's a useless champ at all. He's just not so trustworthy. And there is a fourth point, which actually is also a reason why Teemo has such a bad reputation among all those players, which are simply trolls. Let's put it like that. People which are just standing there and camping and standing there and camping and not really playing, just camping, putting shrooms and camping and not really interacting with the team. And everybody of us has had at least one game with a Teemo who acted like this, who just sat there and used his weird little stealth passive and was hoping to kill off stuff, which these people often manage to achieve, but they're actually throwing the team under the gutter for that, because their team needs somebody interacting with them. That's also one other point, which leads to the Teemo is useless thought. But what I really want to point out is that in a in an environment where most of your team is actually performing pretty well, Teemo is a very, very powerful champ because he adds up so much in terms of terrain control, which is really great. I mean, controlling the environment is a very rare attribute on League of Legends champs. And if you're really good in placing mushrooms, you can do a lot for your team. You can set up so big plays with that. You can control Baron area, you can control Dragon area. You can bring up so much annoyance to the enemy team. The later the game gets, the more the shrooms hurt. So that's something. Well, I had games where a single mushroom decided the outcome of a complete team fight. Something like 4 people running through a choke point and all 4 stepping through a mushroom while your team is standing right next to them. It's mayhem. This ultimate from this little dude is so strong if played properly, but also so damn useless if you're not good at using it. So that sums it up. That's really the thing. I, for myself, compare Teemo Top a lot with Shaco Top, actually. It's a lot about mind games. It's a lot about preparation, about baiting, and getting into the head of your enemy and bringing him to rash and bad decisions because they're so damn annoyed of your person. That's pretty much it, because generally speaking, Teemo's a weak champion. But you can get really into your head, and if you do the proper preparations around certain areas, you get damn big. And that's why people don't like playing against good Teemos and love to play against bad Teemos, because if you're playing against a bad Teemo, you're just going Darius or Nasus or something like that and just run down their faces. That's the end of the story. And I gotta admit, it happens to me as well from time to time, especially if I run into some Smurf top laner or something like that, some power spike I didn't expect at that point. Then I get steamrolled too. But generally speaking, this little dude produces a lot of tilt on the enemy team. He's so powerful at tilting people out of the game that I really love to play him, because it's, yeah, just my playstyle. I like getting on the nerves of people, and that's why I like to play Teemo. I hope my thoughts and my ramblings here opened up your head for the public opinion about Teemo, while people think that he's a useless champion, while he's actually really not a useless champion. Especially in lower elo. In higher elo, I think it's a good idea to swap into something different if you're not really up for maining Teemo completely, because when you do want to pull off this champion in higher elos, you gotta be aware of the fact that you're putting yourself into a rough challenge. It's a lot easier to survive and thrive in higher elos with easier to play champions than going for something like Teemo, which requires, in fact, a lot of practice and everything to interact properly with the higher elos, because it lies in his kit. Teemo doesn't have mobility skills. Teemo doesn't have hard CC, and he has a horribly low range. Compared to other meta picks for the top lane, let's go through some, like Camille is a very hot meta pick for the top lane. And what's Camille about? She can jump around, she can make picks, and she's very mobile and very burst heavy. And when compared to Teemo, he can burst pretty hard too, but he can't jump into people's faces like a Camille can. And that's the problem. You're basically picking up a champ with a weaker kit compared with the hot meta picks, and trying to win in a very, very competitive environment while you're not using the strongest abilities available in game to win games, actually. I mean, Teemo's skill set is fine and dandy and everything, but it's not really meta. Don't get me wrong there. The meta is just about mobility, taking chances, and being in fights quick and bursting down stuff. That's, well, back a few seasons, the job of top lane was also split pushing a lot, and that was a time where Teemo was actually more interesting as he is right now, because split pushing is not so much a thing anymore. Yeah, and that's me BMing a little, because I was really happy saving my Caitlyn from this Nocturne Assault. Um, yeah, so is Teemo a useless champion? No. Is he worse than other meta picks? Yes. To be totally honest here, there are better and easier picks than Teemo for the top lane. It's pretty hard to bring him to a stable performance where you're like winning at least 60% of your matchups. It's really, really hard. It's really not easy to get to that standard. And you're always really, really team reliant while you're playing Teemo. There's a reason why there's the word team in Teemo. Kind of like. Bad puns have to be hanging around here. Jokes aside, Teemo's really team reliant in his success, but he amplifies the success of a winning team tremendously. That's something you really have to take into consideration. But it all doesn't change anything when you're having the losing team and you're not able to swing the momentum towards your team, to be quite honest. And that's the problem about the whole situation here. So, yeah, these are my thoughts about the topic, is Teemo a useless champion or not? Hope you enjoyed this video, and feel free to leave a comment or something like that, and see you guys soon again. Bye bye.